on the end of the world. So this is
Yeah.
finished.
So we're gonna. It looks like we're just going right into it, checking out his abilities like we usually like to do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's time. Here we go.
Oh, that's so crazy.
Ooh.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, like always, so many things going on here. Especially the meteor. That's a lot to take in. So we'll see that one more time and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. So we'll break things up now. So
Yeah.
we saw the entire kit as it is. Let's break things piecemeal now.
All right, and yeah, I guess we'll start with the passive. So his passive's called Obsidian Flesh, and what's going on with the passive then?
Right. So Surtr's flesh is made of obsidian, and basically when he loses enough health, okay. Well, I guess things to notice is that he is a warrior, right? He's a physical-based warrior. He has melee basic attacks, although with a little bit increased range. But when he does take enough damage via that passive, you can see a little bit of a obsidian fragment kind of splits off of him.
Yeah.
And Surtr himself can pick that back up to regenerate some of the health that was lost over time, as well as a protections buff. Thing to note as well is that enemies can actually step over those fragments to destroy them. So
Okay.
if you're versing a Surtr, just make sure when you're when you're hitting him and you see him get low, you want to tread over those fragments.
It's
Yeah.
a dancing lane.
It's a
you might
dancing
say.
lane, which is pretty cool.
Make
It's
sure
also
to
his
stomp
main
it out.
form of self-sustain and regeneration. So you really want to deny him those if you can, and he really wants to pick those up. It's his own little mini game.
And yeah, and again, always an opportunity for conflict too, because you can try to predict. Oh, they see that their instinct is to stomp it out. I'm gonna take over and attack that, or on the reverse, he needs this sustain. He's gonna go for that. I have to take advantage of that. So
And going back a step as well, because we talked about the melee basic attacks. If Surtr, you can see Surtr has actually a 4-hit chain.
yeah.
And if you look right there, the first hit is a standard, second and third hits are cleaves, and the fourth hit is a heavy hit. The second hit's also kind of a weak cleave, which is a little bit unique there too. So standard, cleave, large, slow hit.
Awesome.
But yeah, let's move from the passive and the basic attacks to the first ability, Flames of
Yeah,
Muspell.
Let's do it.
So Flames of Muspell is singular in purpose, and what it does is it is a basic attack stim. We've seen a few of those before, but it has a couple of unique effects. In fact, it has quite a few interesting things going on.
I'll lay 'em
We
out.
can't just do things simply, right?
No.
So Surtr sets his sword ablaze, and when he next hits an enemy god, it deals bonus magical damage.
Ooh,
on-
he is
on
a
a-
warrior.
on a
He is a physical warrior. We
Oh.
talked about that before, but yes, this is a little bit of a transcendence here. He is going to be dealing bonus magical damage. There is a physical burn that's active as well, because if you have a fiery sword that's hitting you, it's going to set you aflame a little bit. So let's go back to that in a second. So he deals physical burn damage as well as a bonus magical damage proc. Also, you can see he's the Lord of Muspelheim. He's got to bring his fiery horde with him. That's what he does to break the Bifrost Bridge. So this ability actually spawns a fiery imp that will attack enemies for a short period of time.
And that's a throwback in itself too. because
Exactly.
We've seen Surtr in previous eras of Smite have some connection to those little fellas.
Yep, we wanted
Yeah.
to kind of bring that idea back again. So one of the goals for our version of Surtr as a playable character was to make sure that we harken back a little bit to what he is like as an NPC, but we didn't want to just directly draw all inspiration from that.
Yeah.
That's not very exciting.
Yeah, because this is his next stage in Smite. You want that inspiration, that
He's
history, that
graduated.
foundation, but this is a new phase for the Fire Giant.
Exactly. So
Sure.
one final thing that this ability does, other than the fact that it's unique and does bonus magical damage, is it actually is a stacking mechanism. So if you kill when the debuff is on an enemy, that flame debuff, that damage, if that enemy dies while that flame damage is on them via yourself or from any other sources to make it a little bit easier to stack, you actually gain that bonus magical damage proc increases in damage every single time. So you can keep stacking that up to 200 times, I think is the last number we went with. It is an obscenely large amount, and you have obscenely small fragments of damage you're going to be increasing over time.
Yeah.
So this is a long game. You can continue to empower your bonus magical damage proc because it doesn't scale. You can't buy magical items or anything like that. So the
Yeah.
more you utilize Flames of Muspell to kill lane minions, kill jungle minions, kill enemy gods, you can empower further uses of Flames of Muspell.
Yeah, and like you said, this works on anything really. So get those last hits, get that extra gold, and most importantly, get those stacks because you want to be hitting hard with that magic.
True, it's fuel for the fire. Awesome. Well, yeah, let's move on to the second ability then. Giant's Grasp.
So Surtr is the Fire Giant. What does he want to do? Well, he wants to pick things up and throw them around. So we want to do something a little bit unique here. So as you can see, he's kind of has a 2-targeter mechanism. The first time he picks something up, if there is nothing around him, he will just grab a meteor from the earth itself and chuck it forward, stopping on the first enemy and stunning it. However, if there is a lane minion around, which we don't actually have spawned right now, he'll actually pick that up and it'll throw through all the different enemies and stopping on the first god hit. Now, if we spawn a Fire Imp from his one, we can actually pick that up as well as the third option, which works very, very similar to the lane minions, except it stops the first enemy, stuns them, and does an AoE explosion. Now, note that damage from the throw and the explosion will not damage the same target, but you can do that through a minion wave and still explode on that, and it'll deal bonus damage there. So, 3 things you can pick up: either nothing, which spawns a meteor, a lane minion, an enemy lane minion specifically, and not jungle minions. He's not that great in the jungle, but you can give him a try. And then finally his fiery imps from the AO1, and well, maybe from somewhere else too.
Ooh, all right, super cool. Always love being able to just yeet things. So Ember Walk comes up next for ability number 3.
Yeah, so Ember Walk is kind of that like movement speed utility. Surtr expands a fiery ring around him of embers that provides him movement speed. If he hits enemies with it, it also deals damage and slows them, and it expands and contracts. So the expansion and the persistence of the ring deals damage once, the contraction does damage a second time. While that ring is active, if the enemies are within the actual like outer ring component itself, they will take ticking damage as well. But if they're inside the ring, inside kind of that donut shape, they won't take any damage from that persistent tick. They'll still take the expansion and contraction damage, but they're actually not going to be taking the persistent damage. That way, Surtr can kind of keep them in like that sweet spot, which his basic attacks will also be able to reach him because he's got that extra range.
Yeah.
But you kind of want to make sure that like, hey, you're kind of keeping people near you, or you're trying to like, chase them down with that movement speed buff and that movement speed slow that you're going to be hitting them with.
Yeah, great kiting mechanism. You want to keep them in the zone as you're, running after them, or they're chasing after you.
Also, the more enemies you hit with this, the more movement speed Surtr gets up to a small cap too, and that's enemies, not just enemy gods. So the more you're kind of doing this in team fights or in the wave, you're actually gaining more movement speed. And there's one last fun mechanism too, which is if there is a passive fragment out, Ember Walk will actually automatically pick that up.
Oh, that's cool.
So there we go. So if that's there, you can see that picking up from range.
Nice.
So that way, if he's got that active, he's in a team fight, he's getting smacked a lot, it'll automatically kind of just pick up.
Super handy. All right, so we've made it to the piece du resistant.
Yeah, there's one thing that we haven't seen yet that I'm kind of looking forward to here.
Oh yeah, we got an ult. End of days.
End of
Very
days.
apt.
We talked about
for
it at the
bringer
beginning.
of Ragnarok. Like I want to see this. He turned into a meteor. I
That's
saw it.
That's
happen.
what happens. So after a short build-up, as we've seen with similar rooted CC immune abilities, Surtr surges into the air, infusing into a large meteor. While he's in the air, Surtr is actually immune to all damage and can choose where he comes crashing down. Kind of similar to like what we've seen with like Yu 3. So you can actually kind of move as you're falling. Now, before you actually fall to the ground, several mini meteorites split off, dealing damage, kind of actually focusing enemy gods too. So if there's enemy gods nearby, it will home in on them. The enemies can try and move out of the way too. Or it'll choose randomized locations if there's no enemy gods and no enemy minions. You can see there was one meteorite each that kind of targeted onto the Zodins. And these meteorites do a little bit of damage and spawn those fiery imps that we also saw on Flames of Muspell. Now yourself, Surtr, you're the large meteor. If you come crashing down and hit an enemy, you'll actually deal extra damage and knock them out. So it's got a little bit of CC component as well.
That is an incredible ability to look at. Like, I feel like every god that comes out has one thing about them or one piece of their kit or one part of their design that you